All right, everyone. Apologies for the slight delay there. My name is Whitney Rogers. I'm the Training and Technical Support Manager for Gemvision, and I'm joined with Lainey Fontenot, who's our Training Development and one of our instructors for Gemvision. So welcome to our October Solutions session. Today, we're going to talk about the render tool in depth and how you can use this tool to market with CounterSketch. We'll also go through our Pinterest to price examples, as well as our new library designs, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers. The first thing I want to talk about today is our rendering tool. So the render tool gives you the ability to create renders to send to your customers of what their finished design would look like, but you can also use this tool for marketing purposes. So I'm going to hop back over into CounterSketch here and go straight into that render tool and kind of talk about some of the different options we have available. Here in the top right, you're going to have that kind of like cogwheel settings icon for you. And then here you'll also have the camera icon. If I select the camera icon, it's just going to take my default render settings and it's going to render that piece for me. Another thing to note when I am rendering is that it is going to render in the position that I have it on my screen. So in this customization screen, whatever angle or however zoomed in you are, that is how that piece is going to render for you. So let's go into the settings and talk a little bit about the different options we have available. First, I want to talk about the render resolution. So we defaulted to 600 by 600, which is a decent quality, maybe not large enough to print an ad or share on a social media platform, but it is just kind of a standard default that we've set in place for you. But you have the option to go in and change that resolution. So here at the top, you'll see that we've already put some resolutions for social media platforms, so ideal resolutions, I guess I could say. So if you know that you're going to post this to Facebook, if you really want to post it on your Instagram story, we're giving you the ideal resolution to post to those platforms, as well as some higher resolutions if you're looking to maybe print an ad for your business that you want to print out in your store. The second option up here is the lay flat. So right now I'm just in perspective. You'll notice if I kind of scooch this over, I still have the ability to adjust the angle of my piece as well as zoom in and out. If I want this to lay flat, I can just select that lay flat checkbox and it's going to lay my ring down as if it was sitting on a solid surface. So if you're trying to maybe take this render, put it on your own background, you want it to look like it's laying flat on a surface, you can utilize that lay flat option. It also works well with a couple of our props. For example, this kind of block prop that we have, it works great if you lay it flat. It looks like it's really sitting on that block. Another option we have is this toggle render preview. So when I select the toggle render preview, you'll see that I get these two gray spaces on my screen. This is indicating what the render plane is. So for example, if I move this piece over and I have half of this piece in this gray area, that is telling me that that half will not render. So anything within the gray area is not going to be a part of your render. So if you're trying to get a really zoomed in shot, or maybe you have a pretty large piece and you're worried about getting it completely in the render, you can use that toggle render preview to make sure that you have your full piece within that white area. So you're ensuring that you have everything in the render. We also have our render prop options, so it's always going to default to no prop, but you do have the option to go through and select from a variety of props. For this example, I'll go ahead and select the ring box, and you'll notice when I do that, that my primary and secondary materials are now available to select. That primary material is going to be the outside of your box. So let's choose just a nice wood color. And then that secondary material is going to be the inside of your ring box. So I'm actually going to stick with this silk bone. You'll notice as I hover over, it's going to give me a description of what it is. There's kind of different textures in here so you can play around. Maybe you want to match the packaging that you already have within your store. So you can kind of come through here and utilize the different colors to match your own branding of your business. The third option here is going to be our ground plane. So this is going to be the background that that render is going to render on. So there's a bunch of different options. We have kind of some reflective surfaces, some matte surfaces, different textures. We have a few that look kind of like a granite. And then you can come down to your environment. Your environment is going to be all about the lighting that it's taken within. I personally just like the default of studio, but you can come through here and play around with the different lighting scenarios. Some cast a little bit more shadows. For example, this blur studio gives a little bit of a darker look. It doesn't have that kind of perfect studio lighting. So you can play around and kind of determine which ones you like best, or if you're looking for a certain aesthetic, you can play around with the different lighting scenarios because they will make a difference on how the stones, the diamonds, as well as the metal is reflecting. So here I can select a render. It's going to render my piece in its current position. So I'm just going to position this at a little angle here, zoom out a little bit. And I'm also just going to pull it down because that ring box, I want to get kind of that whole effect of the ring box. So if I just hold shift and right click, I can kind of position that so I get that whole ring box in my render. A few other options here. So save renders to folder and portfolio. So if you want to auto save your renders, I recommend auto saving to your portfolio. It makes it really easy for you to go back and reference these renders at a later time, especially if you're working alongside a customer and kind of creating some renders for them. It's automatically going to save it into their portfolio for future use or future reference. You also have the option to render props on alpha channel and the ground plane. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, but first I'm going to just select render and take a look at this first render that we have created. So you can see I have my outside, so my primary and secondary colors. My piece is in the same exact position as I had it on my screen, and then I have that kind of granite look in the background. So I could save this at a high resolution. I could drop it into an editing program, add my logo in, maybe some verbiage for an ad, and create my own personal marketing directly from this render that I created. But I also have the option to take this render without the background, or the ground plane as it's known, and drop it in on my own background and kind of create something customized. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about how you can do that. So just a quick look, you can utilize that alpha channel as it's known. So you can render props on the alpha channel or just render the ground plane on the alpha channel. And what that does is you'll see here, these are all renders that I took from CounterSketch. It removes that background. So that ground plane that we've selected, it's going to remove that so you can take that render and drop it into your own backgrounds and create your own marketing schemes. So if I go back to CounterSketch, I go back into those settings. All I need to do is select this render ground plane on alpha channel. If you render the prop on the alpha channel, so for example, I have the ring box right now, it's going to render the ring as if it's in that ring box. So it's going to cut the bottom of that shank off because that's not visible with my prop. And that's all you're going to see is kind of half of that ring. So it's going to remove the prop, it's going to remove the ground plane. If you want the prop to be included, so if you're rendering with a ring box, or maybe you have the mandrel, you want to create something fun with the prop in the image, you're going to select Render Ground Plane on the alpha channel. It's going to remove this ground plane from your render and just allow you to take that image and drop it on your own background. One thing I do recommend when you're doing this, that you don't have a bright color background, that you just stick with kind of the white reflective. That's going to give you the best results when you're rendering on the ground plane, or the alpha channel, I should say. So just a couple examples that I created to kind of show you. So here you can see what I did is I just Googled images. And with that, I just dropped those renders onto that image, and then I dropped my logo on there as well. So just an example of how you can kind of create your own custom marketing. Here I just used a couple standard renders that I took and just dropped my logo in to create some custom marketing images to go around my business. So just some ideas on how you can utilize CounterSketch to create kind of custom marketing schemes for your business. Next, we'll go into our Pinterest to price example. So I'm going to take us through this first one here, which is kind of a floral earring design where I'm utilizing polar array as well as mirror. And then Lainey's going to take us through a pendant design as well. First thing, we want to go to new session. And I'm going to go fully into freehand. So I'm going to create this fully from freehand. You'll notice here that I don't have the option for earrings. You'll notice that we don't have an earring library in CounterSketch. That does not mean you can't create earrings in here. So what you're going to do if you're looking to create an earring design, you're going to create one. And then when you're submitting to CounterSketch, you're going to let them know, hey, I want to create 2 of these for earrings. And you can add or utilize a wire. So if I go into wires, I can kind of place where I want my post to be by using this wire design, but we're not going to print and cast it like that. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go to stellar.com, find the earring post or component that you would like us to assemble to your earring, and we'll gladly assemble it for you. You just need to let us know what the item number is and where you would like us to assemble it for you. So even though we don't have it listed out in here, you can most definitely create some custom earrings for your customer. So coming into settings, I am going to start with this bezel. This is a great full bezel. I use this a lot when creating freehand pieces. So here I have it in my customization screen. On the left-hand side, I have my design stack. I'm going to go ahead and just turn my grid on and go straight to that top-down view. Since I'm creating an earring, I can just create it on this flat surface. It's going to help me to make sure everything's aligned and symmetrical on all sides of my piece. I think I'm actually going to keep this just as is. So I'm going to keep it at the 6.5. I'm going to stay with a round. Actually, one thing I will do is I'll make this height a little bit shorter. So I'm just going to left click, pull it to the left a little bit just to reduce the height there. I can also bring this angle out slightly just so it's a little straighter for me to lay pieces down. So coming down, I can see setting bezel angle. This is indicating it's adjusting that angle on either side of my bezel. So I'm just going to left click again. Oh, that moved it inwards. So let's go the other way to the right. That's just going to pull it out ever so slightly so that it's a little bit straighter. So now toggling through my different viewpoints, I'm going to design mostly in that top-down view so I have a good view of my overall piece from the top, and I know that I'm looking straight down and can keep everything aligned. So next, I'm going to come into my freehand parts library, and I'm just going to select a scroll. I'm looking for just kind of a V-shaped piece. think it might actually be on page 2. Yep, let's go to page 2 here. Perfect. So I'm just going to select this kind of V-shaped piece so I can add in a stone here. And then I'm going to connect the whole design with a couple more small settings. So with freehand, as we all know, it's automatically going to drop that piece right into my center axis. So using my arrows, they're going to highlight kind of that hot pink or purpley color. And then left clicking and kind of dragging my mouse, I'm able to move that piece through my customization screen or design plane. So here I'm just going to move it over. I'm going to use the rotation arrow here to rotate this piece at a 45-degree angle. To do that, I'm left clicking that rotation arrow. I'm holding down the shift key on my keyboard, and that is going to allow me to rotate this piece in increments of 45 degrees. So now I'm going to start to position my piece. Going into perspective is just going to give me that better side view. I kind of want to thicken this up quite a bit and just begin to position my piece. So here, probably scale it up just slightly. Pull it up a little bit. So we're getting that full V. Yep. And then now I'm going to use the polar array tool to array it around my piece. So here, I first left click on that blue square here, and I'm going to get my bend icon. I don't want to bend the piece right now. I will use this a little later, but I'm going to click once more to get that polar array tool. So here, left clicking on my polar array, I'm going to take that angle arrow and take it all the way to 360 degrees. But one thing I noticed is that it doesn't look like they're evenly, so let's turn this off really quick. This one kind of looks off to me, so actually I'm going to come back in and I'm going to reduce my count to 2. And then I'm going to use my mirror to just mirror it to the side so that everything is laid out symmetrically across all 4 quadrants of my piece. So now that I have that piece laid out, I'm going to go in and select another head to add in the middle of that V. I want just a standard 3-prong basket setting. So here, looking from the perspective view, I don't really have a good viewpoint of the underneath of what the head looks like. So going to my through finger, I can see that this is a basket, and I have that 3 prongs. So I'm going to select this piece. And I'm going to use the arrows to position. I'm again going to do the same thing and rotate it to that 45-degree angle, kind of lining up my arrow right in the middle of that V, just pulling it straight down. Using my design stack, I'm going to come over and left click on that slider for my size and pull down that size. So I'm happy with the fit. Probably go a little larger. I'm going to go to perspective just to check how this is placed on the piece. So I want it to be pretty even. I don't want it to go too far below. So I'm going to position that, make sure I have a good connection, which I do, and it's not interfering with my stone. So I'm going to do the same thing and go back into that polar array tool. So bringing all the way around to 360 degrees. And then this one looks slightly off center again, kind of like this V looked. So I'm going to do the same thing and reduce the count to 2 and then just mirror. So now it's perfectly in the center of that V. Now I want to add 2 more stones just to kind of connect the piece and make it more of a round shape. So here, going back into settings, I actually want the 4-prong setting this time. So here, right next to that 3-prong, I have my standard 4-prong basket. And again, I can't see it because it's dropping it into that center axis. I'm going to move it straight up, and I'm going to utilize the slider in my design stack to adjust the size once more. So here I'm going to begin to position my piece up. And I noticed that this gallery rail has more of a round profile shape and this one has squares. So I'm going to come into my design stack, kind of scroll down, and I want to adjust that bottom gallery rail to match. So here I can see that this is my upper gallery rail, and then here I have my lower gallery rail settings, and this is going to give me my profile shape. So I'm just going to change that to round, and we now match that other setting we have. So coming back to the top, I'm going to go ahead and select mirror, and this is just going to help me gauge the correct size. So I'm going to pull it down even more until I have a good connection between both. And now I can see that just the edge of that V is kind of poking out right there. So I am going to go into perspective, rotate to the back of my piece. And here I'm going to select those V, kind of that V-shaped piece. I'm still in that polar array because that was the last tool that I used for this piece. So just clicking that blue box is going to take me back to the beginning again, and I can click through to get to that bend tool. So here I'm going to click once more. You can see that I have bend available now. So here we're always going to select this larger sphere to adjust the bend. So you can see now I'm bending. I'm kind of just watching up here to bend it into this setting so that it has a good connection, but not to interfere with my stone. So actually, I think I can move this down just slightly. There we go. And go back into that piece. Just adjust it so slight. So I might be interfering with it just a little right there at the top. So let's go back to the beginning and just reduce that height a little bit. And that's a bit better. So now that I'm happy with the connection here and my pieces are placed, not interfering with each other, I'm going to go back into polar array and I'm going to array these around my piece. So coming all the way to 360 degrees, I can see that everything lined up well for this one. So I don't need to use that mirror. I already have it mirrored to the side. So now, last little detail is I just want to add some mill grain to the top of my bezel just to create a little bit more detail. So here, pulling that straight up. This is a CP part, so I know that by the prefix of the SKU number. So that stands for counterpart. So those counterparts are always going to have a design stack. So here I'm able to adjust the size just slightly. It lines up pretty well. So I'm just going to bring them each to 7.3. Going into perspective, just manipulating that so it has a good connection. Probably bring it up slightly actually. And now if I did want to place this order and I wanted to represent to my customer, maybe they're super visual, where the post would go, I can always come in here and, as I said, you can grab this wire, use it as a post so you can place it onto the back of your piece. We won't cast it like that or grow it like that. You'll need to go to seller.com and just let us know what SKU you would like us to attach. And you can do that by going into that order screen. At the very bottom of your order screen, you're going to have those additional design notes. And in that field, so here you have anything you want to relay to CAM services, you can put please produce 2 as earrings, and you would like whatever item number post assembled to the back of your piece. So that is how you would create this kind of floral earring design. So now I'm going to stop sharing briefly and I'm going to transition it over to Lainey so that she can share her pendant design with you. So my presentation moved. So Lainey is going to go over this pendant design.
Okay, awesome. You guys can hear me. So today we're going to make this pendant piece that we found off of Pinterest. So first things first, if you're working on the earrings, just go ahead and start a new session. Now we're going to do this using just freehand parts. So we'll go into our freehand tile. And for this one, I actually want to use a kind of circular shape to lay my settings around, almost as like a dummy shape that I could hide later. But this will just help me align all of my stones perfectly. And I'm just looking for that flat circle. There we go. And if you notice in our customization window, this one starts with a SP, so this is a static part. We won't have the option to adjust it with our design stack, but we do have these different discs that we can adjust our model with. We could scale it up, scale it that way, and we could still move it around. So first thing I want to do is actually turn on my grid. That way I could see where I'm aligning all my stones. Then I just want to come into the top view and make this bigger. I want to align all of those settings around the outside edge. I'm just going to make it a little bit thinner so it doesn't get in the way of my designing. All right, next thing we want to do is add a head. So we'll go down to our add freehand parts and we'll go into our settings tile. And for this one, I'm looking for that 3-prong head. I think this may be it, but I'm going to go over here and change my view so I can see. And that'll work. And we'll just pull it up. And it looks like my gem glitched out, so I'm just going to go ahead and actually duplicate it and then delete that original. All right. Now holding down Shift, I'm going to rotate this, and that's going to let me rotate it at 45-degree increments. I just want to go 90 degrees because I want these 2 prongs to line up around my edge. And that stone is too big for my pendant I'm trying to create, so I'm going to come over here to our stack, and I'm just going to make it smaller, around about a 3.5. And now I can go ahead and line it up with my disc. Okay. The next thing I want to do is actually polar array it around. So by selecting my freehand part, I'll select this blue cube. And you'll see my gray asterisk pop up. This is my polar array icon. And I'll go ahead and activate that. And I'm going to drag my angle to 360. And I'm going to come in here and adjust my count. I'm not sure exactly how many I need just yet. But I want to leave a big enough gap so that a stone can fit. I'll start with 12, and then if I need to adjust it, I can come back. So I'll come back into my freehand parts. I'm going to go ahead and add that same setting that I just used. that 3-prong head. But this time I'm going to make the stone smaller than the 3.5 we previously used. So by using my gumball, I'm going to drag it into position. And I'll just go ahead and move my slider bar and then let's position it by rotating. And that stone is still way too big, so we'll try a 2. Kind of position it in place. I want these to be shared prongs. I'm trying to line up the prongs under here with the larger stone's prongs. Now I'm going to go into perspective view. And as you can see, it's sitting slightly lower than my larger stones. So I'm going to come in there, come into our stack, and we have height override right here. And I'll just kind of adjust that until we get them about even. And I also want to adjust this angle. It's angling out. I want them to sit straight. So I'm looking for that head angle. And I'm going to slide my slider bar until they are about straight. Now I'm going to go back into my original stone, my larger stone, and I want to adjust the angle of that as well. So by selecting it, it'll activate its stack. And I'm going to come over to head angle. And you can see as I'm moving it, it's straightening out those prongs. And that looks good. So the next thing I want to do is come back into that smaller stone, and I actually want to remove these 2 prongs. So with this setting, you have the ability to do that. So coming over to our stack, we'll scroll all the way down, and you'll see the setting individual prongs category. So I'm not sure which prong is which, so I'll just go ahead and toggle them on and off until I find the right one. And that was the correct one I wanted to toggle off. And let's try this one. Oh, perfect. So now we could still adjust it. And we'll come in perspective, and we want to make sure everything's touching. All of our metal is touching so that we could actually cast it. All right, so the next thing we want to do is actually polar array this one, the same way we did the first. So we'll activate the polar array by clicking on this blue cube and then selecting this gray asterisk. We'll move our angle to 360 and we'll adjust our count so that all of these stones fit nicely in between the larger ones. Now in our Pinterest picture, our larger stones had V prongs. So we're going to go ahead and actually add in a freehand part. We'll go into our shapes. And we'll use this V-shaped piece, and we'll manipulate it to resemble that of a V prong. So once again, all freehand parts are dropped in the middle. It's hiding behind my disc shape I have, so I'm just going to pull it out so that I could see it. I want to remove the this prong on the tip of the large stone. And it looks like I adjusted my polar array. So we'll go back to that small stone and change the orientation to which it's arraying. There we go. So back to our large stone, and we'll come to our individual prongs, and we'll just play with it until we find that top prong. There we go. So this one, it was prong 3 that turned off the prong. So we're now going to manipulate this shape. We want to scale it down. Maybe make it a little wider. And I keep selecting my polar array on exit. All right, let's actually go back to our gumball so we don't do that again. All right, so we'll make it wider, and then we'll hug that stone a little bit. And then we'll come into our perspective view, and we'll drag it down. And scale it up. We want this stone to go into our prong just slightly so that we're able to set it. And now I want to come into our side view just to make it line up with that bottom gallery rail. We want to make sure it's touching. I'm actually going to rotate it a little bit so that it goes into that metal more, and then pull it closer. All right, now we want to polar array this around so that we have a V-prong on each of our larger stones. So we'll activate our freehand part. We'll select our blue cube. You'll notice this one actually has the ability to bend. So the first time we select the blue cube, our bend tool will come up. If we click it again, our polar array will activate. So we'll select that asterisk. We'll drag our angle around to 360. And then we're going to increase that count to 12. And I keep pushing the array button. Let's select all of our stones again. There we go. Now we can actually hide this piece because we don't need it anymore. So we'll come down to our freehand parts and we'll select our hamburger menu, and we'll actually just hide it with the eyeball icon. And now you can see from our top view, all of our stones are aligned in a nice little circle. So now we want to actually put jump rings on here. So we'll come back into our freehand parts. We'll go to our bales tile. And we'll select this circular jump ring. So I want the jump rings to sit on this corner and this corner. So we'll pull it out. If you hold down Shift while you move your arrows, you could actually move your piece around, which makes it easier than having to do each arrow individually. So we'll come to our perspective view, and we want to rotate this, holding down Shift so that we go 90 degrees. And we'll come back to our front view and rotate it I want it to line up nicely with this point. And we want it to connect just slightly. Coming over here to our stack, I want to reduce the size of my jump ring. So I'm going to use our slider bar, and I'm just going to adjust the profile width and height, both to 1 millimeter. And I'll do the same to the inside, width and length. Now I need a jump ring on this side. So I'm actually just going to select it and use our mirror tool to mirror it across. The next thing I want to do is put some chains in place. That way we can get a visual of it hanging on a chain. So we'll come into our freehand parts, and this time we'll go into the chains tile. And we're actually going to select, let's see what chain we want. We'll use this one. And if you remember from our picture, it looks like we have individual chains, not one big looped one. So we're going to manipulate this chain to do that. So we'll just rotate it. And we're not actually going to produce this chain with the piece. This is just for visual effects. If you do want the chain, you will go on stellar.com and pick one out, similar to how you did the earring post in the previous example. So once again, holding down Shift while I'm moving the arrow will allow me to move it freely. And I'm just going to mirror this piece over. And it does crisscross at the top, but we just want this piece showing. And lastly, we'll change our metal to rose gold. So we'll come over here to our right tab and we'll select 14 karat rose for our primary metal and also for our secondary metal. And here we have it. We have created our Pinterest piece into CounterSketch. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Whitney.
So I hope everyone enjoyed those two Pinterest to price examples, kind of showing you how you can utilize CounterSketch to create different pieces. So like Lainey said, those, as I spoke about the post for the earrings and she spoke about the chain, those are just for visual purposes within CounterSketch to give your customer a visual of what the piece will look like. We will not grow or cast a chain or post for you. You'll just need to, again, utilize stellar.com to find that SKU. We are more than happy to assemble it for you. So you can go into all of our chain inventory. Just let us know what chain you would like to assemble and how, and we can definitely assemble those for you. So just a look at the new styles for the month. So there was quite a few pieces added as well as some fun freehand parts for you. And then our new Academy videos that have been posted. So if you haven't seen on the online Academy, if you have access to it, so if you have CounterSketch streaming, you are going to have access to the online Academy as part of your streaming package. If you have Perpetual, you can give our sales team a call and they can talk to you about how you can get access to our online academy. It is a great tool to help train not only yourself, but staff members within your store. So one of the things we've seen over the years through CounterSketch is businesses are always more successful with the software if they have more than one person trained. So the Academy is a great platform to use to help train as many associates as you would like. So we have training videos, and then we have some inspirational videos and tutorials on there for you as well. So just a look at what has been added in the last month. Every Wednesday, we will post new content on that platform for you as well. If you're looking to join us for in-person or virtual training, so that'll be hands-on with a Gemvision instructor. We do offer in-person, virtual, and virtual classes. Our last class of the year does start next Monday. It is a virtual class. So if you're looking to get in on that, let us know as soon as possible. I think we have a couple spaces left available. That does come at a charge, so you can give our sales team a call. They'll be able to share pricing and help you get registered for that class. Next year, we'll start up probably in February or March with our schedule for 2022, so you'll see that coming soon. Then join us again next month. So it'll be November 11th at 9 a.m. You can register at stellar.com/CSS webinars. And we are going to talk about how to create user parts using freehand. So if you create something you really love, you want to use it on other designs, you actually have the ability to save that as a user part. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth with that, as well as have some more Pinterest to price examples for you and review new features and releases. If anyone has any questions, we'll begin to close out the session today. I do apologize for the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning and the audio issue. But if anyone has questions, we'll be happy to get those answered for you. And then we also want to know what you thought. So let us know if you're looking for us to cover something specific, you have some ideas for us. We're happy to fulfill those requests for you. So all of you should receive a survey after this call. So fill out that survey, let us know what you thought, how we can be better, what you would like to see in future. It helps us to curate our content for the upcoming months. And then lastly, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking the hour out of your morning to join our solutions session. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll stick around for a little bit in case anyone has those questions for us and get those answered.